Welcome to Nightmare Stories of the Other Side. Joining us today, we have Larry Eissler. He is an author, filmmaker, and historian who focuses on lesser-known haunted locations in the American Midwest. His current research projects focus on the Black Hawk War of 1832, culminating in the book Ghosts of the Black Hawk War. Larry also researches the effects of artificial intelligence and social media, what effects they have on the paranormal community. Welcome in, Larry. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I mean, that kind of sums me up, right? Primarily, I do consider myself a filmmaker first. I have investigated the paranormal for, God, by now, I think it's like 15 years. I've been around for a minute. Um, but I've kind of went through all the phases of the paranormal. When I first started, I was out to disprove it, like it's all crap, everything's fake, and failed miserably at that.
Okay.
And then because I failed so bad, well, now I had to prove it scientifically. Well, something's obviously going on, and I had to come up with a means to understand it. And I did that probably for a couple years. And my viewpoint shifted to where I don't really care anymore to prove it. I don't need numbers. I don't need explanations. I just want to tell really cool stories. And once I took over that mindset, filmmaking kind of felt natural to me, to where now, telling the story about a spirit, about a location, or about an experience, is just made better by investigating now. So, a lot of the projects I work on, I always try to make sure to hit the story first. So, whether that's, the story of the investigators for the night, something that happened to them, or a common theme throughout the night, or the story about one particular spirit that seems to be interacting with the investigators all night long. I always try to hone in on one thing that the audience can be like, "Oh, okay, that's John the janitor. I get it now." And it's always fun for people to message me and pick up on the things that I kind of subtly put in there. And they're like, "I see what you did here. You were alluding to this when you did that." Like, "Oh, you got it." So, um, and now I'm in a weird phase where I'm not doing Expedition Entity anymore. Um, that show wrapped last January, so about a little over a year ago now. To where I'm kind of just doing like standalone stuff, and I get to choose what I want to do with who and where I want to go and when, and it's actually been a lot of fun. And because of that, I think this year I have 13 investigations planned all over, doing a wide assortment of locations. Let me see. My first one I'm doing, I know, is Eloise Asylum.
Nice.
That is not this weekend, but the following weekend. I've never been there before, so I'm really looking forward to that one. Where's my list? Here it is. So I've got Eloise Asylum. I've got Ashmore Estates, Rhodes Hotel, Pine Lawn Manor, Fairview County, the 1912 Hoover House, Rainworth Lodge, Wildwood Sanitarium, and Indiana State.
Yeah.
So those are just a few that I've got coming up between now and I think like September.
Uh,
So I tell people I'm in my paranormal nomad era, where I just strike out on my own and just kind of see what happens.
there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah.
It's different. When I came into this, God, almost 15 years ago, everything was super team focused.
Mhm.
You have to have a team. It's got to be, nine people. And now it's like, I'm just gonna join anyone. Like, hey, I'm in town. Who's doing something? Yeah, you can come join us. Cool, let's do it. And I have a great time.
I'm sure.
So, out of all the locations besides Eloise this year, have you been to the other ones, or will those any be first-time investigations?
So they'll be first time investigations, including Eloise. So my partner Dan, who I joined up with him paranormally probably about 6 months into my stint in the paranormal. I really enjoyed his style, how he does things, and then we worked together for like 14 and a half years. So, because of his work schedule, it was really difficult for him to go out and travel to these locations because he's a corrections officer. So he's
Okay.
always on call. So I always turned him down. And then when he retired from the paranormal last year, now it's like I can kind of go wherever I want. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've just been hitting the road and seeing what happens.
There you go. So besides those locations for this year, since we're talking about 2025, because I was going to save that towards the end, but
Mhm.
it's all good. What other events and happenings do you have going on this year?
Oh my God. I have every bit of, I think, 30 events that I'm doing this year. And I'm still filming. So like a lot of that takes up my time as well. Filming for some of my stuff and then filming for other people. But I know for like this weekend, I'm doing Days of the Dead in Chicago, which is a really big horror con. I'm doing Paraventure next weekend. I have the West Virginia State Pen Horror and Paracon the following weekend. White Hill Mansion in early May. Another Days of the Dead in May. Troy Taylor's Haunted America in June. Paranormal Rockdown. Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. The main Paranormal and Horror Con. I'm all over the place.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
There are worse things to have than to be asked to come to West Virginia or New Jersey or Maine and be like, hey, you want to come and do your talk, or I'll put you in a hotel room.
There you
Done.
go.
Let's go.
Uh-huh.
So, but Maine, all of them I'm driving to except for Maine. It's like a 22-hour drive for me. There's
Yeah,
no way.
that's a
There's no
little
way.
jaunt.
I won't drive to Maine and I won't drive to California. No, no. I need airfare.
Yeah, for
Otherwise,
sure.
otherwise I'll drive. But but yeah, I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Paranormal Rockdown. I know on that Friday night, you and I are getting teamed up to lead the investigations that night.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about how many people are going to be there yet. Of course, most of your ticket sales are going to be the month prior.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they'll get an explosion there in June-ish. So, but hopefully they put us in the third floor because that's where I tend to do the best there,
Okay.
especially for public events. I usually get put on the third floor. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's because the teenagers on the third floor like me, so they'll mess with me, and that's entertaining to the guests.
Uh,
Yeah,
So,
I've never been to Broadhead myself, so it's going to be a new experience for me.
well, I can tell you there's give or take a couple dozen different spirits in the building. Some of them are located on different floors. That's kind of their zone that they stay in. And then others will go to all three floors, and then they kind of overlap with some of the others.
uh,
So you never quite know what you're going to walk into unless it's a spirit that's kind of kept to a certain zone. For example, the most part, the maintenance area is where you're going to encounter the janitor the most. That's his spot. That's where he stays. He's the
Yeah.
janitor. That's his space. The principal's office, you're going to encounter the principal. That's his
mhm.
office. He likes staying there. All of the kids, good luck. They're all over the place and they don't stop ever. They're constantly running around. Some of the teachers tend to stay on their floors. Um, there's a librarian, a nun.
Uh,
Hmm,
where she came
interesting.
from.
So people think she came in with somebody else and she
Okay.
liked it and then she stayed.
Yeah.
So she has a favorite room. She tends to stay in one of the music rooms. And then there are two elementals there that you really have to be careful for. So behind the building, there is at Broadhead Manor an Indian burial ground.
Uh,
Um, and these two elementals protect the grounds. And for some reason, they've also taken up residence in the buildings or in the building on the polar opposite ends. So there's two stairwells on both sides. They tend to hang out on the ends of the building. So
Cool.
on one, you have more of an earth elemental Groot, and then the other is a fire elemental Smudge. And if you upset them, they will hurt you. So just don't upset them.
All right, good to know, Natalie.
Yeah.
So and if you're looking for a little certification for that, they were identified and named by Chris Fleming.
Okay.
So if that name means anything to you as for like authenticity, then like they're there. They're the real deal.
So for it being a school, how does it like interact with kids that are there investigating?
So they do kid investigations pretty frequently. My son, who's 16, he goes there quite a bit. And it's gotten to the point now where I don't even investigate with him. He just goes off on his own and takes my stuff. Um, all of the kids will interact with them. Usually the principal will, the janitor will. Um, and he's gotten the teachers a couple times too. Like most things interact. He's never encountered one of the elementals. So I don't know if maybe they just don't mess with the kids because the kids tend to be more respectful.
Sure.
And then there's only been a couple people that really got messed with by those elementals, but they were being more antagonistic. And those elementals kind of shut that down. So, but yeah, all the times that I've been there for events where investigators brought kids, there's never been a problem. And the kids get great activity because they're kind of like a trigger object if you think
Yeah.
about it.
Hmm.
So I know there's a younger girl spirit there that loves playing with younger kids. So if you bring in a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, there's a good chance that younger spirit's probably going to be around that kid.
Uh,
And then my son likes the third floor because he's a teenager and they say dumb things when they're teenagers. And I guess the spirits up there say dumb things too. So whatever, go to the third floor. It's fine. But yeah. For kids, it's still a great building to investigate. It's good to start investigating for like the first time, or even as you're just kind of getting into it. It's a really good location.
Yeah, we'll be investigating there as a team, like one of our last investigations of the year.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of doing a little different thing. We're going to do a homecoming themed investigation.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I imagine that would kick things up. Absolutely. So, yeah, I imagine you're probably going to do it in the gym, right?
Oh
Mostly.
yeah, we'll kind of have we'll be going throughout the school, kind of like, I got the okay in the gym to kind of set up to make it look like a homecoming dance a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine you might be able to bring some of the lingering spirits down from the other floors into the gym, which would be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of times they tend to kind of remain in their areas, so for them to move to the gym would be really neat.
Yeah. Be high energy for the teenager group.
Oh yeah, and I know with that building, because of the haunted house that they used to run out of there, they have a sound system in the gym that will rattle the walls.
Oh, jeez.
And when Bill plays music, you can feel the energy in the building just spike up like, right
Nice.
away, like immediately. They love music. So, if you play some stuff that they like, you should see a spike in activity immediately afterwards.
All right.
Sure.
Good to know. So, what other kind of activity have you gotten there before we move on to other topics?
Your typical EMF and dowsing rod, K2, all that kind of stuff. Um, Specifically, we had we had one investigation we did. I think it was for our first episode for the show we did there. Um, Dan had crossed one of the spirits over. And we tend to not film that, or if we do film it, we don't put it into the show because that's kind of a personal thing for the spirits.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't like capitalizing on them crossing over, so I tend to not include it. But the young spirit, his name was Norman. I think he was either a teenager or just under a teenager, a young kid. And we finish the show, we get everything going, and everything's fine. While I'm editing the episode, so it hasn't even come out yet, another team went in there and made contact with Norman. And Norman was pretty much just constantly talking about Dan and I and about how we were the ones that crossed him over and stuff like that.
Uh,
And this other group at the time, we didn't know them back then. They're like, I don't even know who these people are. And Bill's like, yeah, that's Dan and Larry. They crossed Norman over. So, you're talking about events that happened months apart, but the spirit still remembered us and what we did. So that was pretty cool.
Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
That was really neat. And then the one story I like telling the most is how one of my cast members almost died while we were filming. Um, so we were in what used to be the principal's office, interacting with the principal. And Jen, who was one of our cast members, she is what you'd call alternative. She has the nose piercing, multiple colored hair, ripped jeans, leather jacket. By today's by today's standards, relatively normal.
Yeah.
But 80 years ago, not so much. This would be the problem child that the principal would constantly be hounding after and sending to detention and all that stuff. So while we were filming, we're all just kind of sitting on the couch in the room and doing an SB7 session with the K2 and a couple other things. And on the video, you can see Jen's eyes just glaze over. And the way that it happened was, it's kind of an L-shaped couch, and we had multiple cameras coming in to cover everybody. There was nowhere for me to stand because the back of the room's also visible. So I'm wedged between two cameras like this, just like hitting the little tiny blind spot I could find. And that blind spot was standing in front of the entertainment center. So I'm sitting there just watching. I can't see my cameras anymore. I'm just hoping everything looks good. And Jen goes, I gotta tell you guys something. I feel like he likes things to be ship shape. It's got to be his way. And then she goes, and I feel like I'm gonna pass out.
Oh no.
So she stands up, and Dan, my partner, is like, Jen, get out of here. Go get out of here. Go out into the hallway, get some air. And she takes like one step forward, and you can't see it on the camera because she stands up, but her eyes kind of roll back. And then
Oh
she falls forward. As fate would have it, right into my arms, because I'm standing in the exact spot that she was going to fall into. If I wasn't standing there to catch her face would have hit the corner of the entertainment center.
Ooh.
And and she very likely could have died.
yeah. So you were
So
just meant to be there from the beginning.
I had to have been meant to be there in the
Yeah.
only spot possible. And
Yeah.
I literally stood there and went, "Ooh," and that was it. And then we walked her out. As soon as she got into the hallway, she was fine. But even on the video, you could hear her voice and you could see her face. Like she was not fine. She was very scared. But she's since been back to Broadhead numerous times. And investigated the principal's office and all that. So, it's nothing to where, she's not going back anymore, but when something is affecting you, you should speak up about it right away.
Oh,
And
definitely.
hey, I need to get out of here. Somebody help me out, please.
Yeah.
So now most people don't have to deal with camera angles and blind spots like we do. So, like the room was set up because of that to where it's kind of tricky to get out. So, if a normal group were investigating, it wouldn't be quite as bad.
Okay.
But yeah, for some reason, I was just in the right spot and I just happened to catch her.
Nice.
That's cool.
And the most important thing is it's all caught on camera.
Yeah.
So people can be like, "Oh, geez, Jen, holy cow!" Yeah,
Right.
it was kind of scary.
So today I was kind of looking through your page just to kind of put like, topics to cover.
Sure,
Another one
I
that
put a
caught
lot of
my
stuff up.
oh yeah. Another one that caught my eye. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences at the Freeport Masonic Temple?
Ooh, okay. So the Freeport Masonic. If you ever get the chance to go, I highly recommend it. It is an active servicing Mason temple. Like they still do their rituals in their ritual rooms. They have like the little aprons and the medals and all that stuff, right? Like it's a real deal. And so we go into the film, and I like doing a location scouting beforehand, just so I have an idea of what I'm working with before I bring literally a car full of equipment in just to film. And I kid you not, this building is the size of a city block.
Jeez.
And there are like tunnels that just kind of wind around all over the place. And it's like, where am I right now in this building? How do I get back to my equipment? You
Yeah.
get lost super easily. And there's multiple floors, and it's a wild place. But that's another one where there are dozens of spirits. So when we were doing that location, there was every bit of 2 dozen hotspots where they get activity from different spirits. So we try to do everything in one night when we did the show. If you rent a building out and they give you 8 hours to investigate, I'm filming the investigation in 8 hours. That's it. None of this. It happens over 5 days, every single
Yeah.
night. No, I get one day. Whatever they give you is what they give me. So for the temple, I want to say we started our investigation around 7 or 8 p.m. and the spirits pretty much told us to quit at 1 a.m. So we didn't really get a whole lot of time investigating because the spirit activity died down, and then usually it doesn't come back until 3 a.m. And I'm like, I'm not staying here for another 2 hours. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted. I've been here all day. But all of the investigating that we did in those, what is it, 6 hours? I had enough to make 2 episodes for my show.
Crazy.
There was so much activity in all these different spots, and one of the most active areas for us that night was the auditorium, the stage, whatever you want to call it. It's a really nice old-timey stage. I want to say the seating's like 1,200, so not massive, but for a century-old theater, it was big back in the day.
Yeah.
And they've had some big names come through there. REO Speedwagon, Johnny Cash. They had a live circus on stage. They had an elephant on stage
Hmm.
Oh,
back in the day.
jeez.
So like some really wild things went through that building. And we walk in during the day, we do kind of like our, hey, show me 3 hot spots in the building. We'll talk about it for the interview. And they showed us the stage. And so the light board of the stage is original. It's massive and it's covered by this big wooden box because we're not allowed to touch it because if you break something, it's irreplaceable. So, we get there, all the lights are off, and we basically have to use the house lights in the seating area, which is run by switches on the wall. And then I had the light from behind with my box lights. There was no overhead stage lights that were on. That night when we came back, only the blue lights were on the stage. So somehow just the blue lights came on, and then they were constantly flickering. And we're like, these lights were off like 4 hours ago. No one's in the building except for us. I didn't touch this $1,000 system that is irreplaceable. You didn't touch it. How did this turn on? And so we start interacting with the lights. We were doing 2K2s, 8 to 10 feet apart. This one means yes, this one means no. And it only counts if it gets to the yellow light. So you got to get it at least up to, I think yellow is what? 2.5 to 5 milligauss, I think.
I don't know.
I think it's 2.5 to 5. So yellow is a pretty significant hit though. Like you have to give me something good.
Yeah.
And we were getting solid answers back and forth, one over the other. And we're like, cool, this is great. And then my partner Dan goes, can you just stop flickering the lights? Because it's really messing with my head. And then in the camera, you see the lights go poof. And then everyone just kind of sits there. And then Dan just starts laughing in the dark because it's like, holy cow, they actually stopped flickering the lights. So we're getting such great stuff. Dan's like, why don't you swap out and you take one? And I'm like, yeah, I mostly work behind the camera for the show. I'm very rarely in front. So I'm like, absolutely. Let me add it. So we kind of keep doing the same thing, and we have an SB7 out, just kind of running while we're talking. And earlier in the night, I was talking with two spirits that were sitting on either side of me out in the chairs in the theater. And there's this like massive cold bubble around me. And I'm like, well, it's got to be these two dudes around me. So I asked Dan to grab our little FLIR and shine it over and tell me what's going on. You can see this purple shape of just cold only around me, and then no registration of heat at all. And then Sierra's like 4 seats down. And you can see her, she's warm, but the edge of her between her and I is starting to get cold. And she was like, yeah, I can feel the cold on my right side. It's coming from you. And I'm like, yeah, I can feel it. It's not fun. So I'm talking to these guys, having a great time. And then they take off. And I'm trying to get them to come back because I'm a veteran. I want to talk to the veteran spirits. And I guess this spirit of a little boy came in and started talking to the SB7. And I'm like, listen, little dude, I will talk to you. I just want to finish my conversation with these guys instead. And I guess he didn't like that because not long afterwards, I felt a pinch on my arm.
Oh no.
And I'm like, what the hell was that? And on the camera, you see me kind of look down at my arm, and the SB7 goes, bite. And I'm like, oh, what was that? And then Sierra goes, that said bite. And I'm like, did you bite me? Did you just bite me? And then she hits her flashlight, and there's just a ring on my arm. And it's like, this little kid bit me because I wouldn't talk to him. And then later on that night, Dan's on the stage with his dowsing rods doing a solo session. Dowsing is his favorite method. And he starts asking, like, did you bite Larry when he wouldn't talk to you? Yes. Are you sorry? No. Damn, this little kid. So unfortunately, the person that let us in the building didn't think that would shine the best light on the spirits and the building by including that in the show. So I had to remove it. But when I do my most haunted presentation for the show, when I go to events, that clip is in there. So I do show it that way. But that is also a wild location. And because of its size, it is not for the faint of heart. You will spend a long time trying to cover the entire building.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because that one caught my mind or my eye because back in last May I went to the haunted 1861 Masonic Lodge with Great
Yeah.
Paranormal.
Yeah.
We had a very interesting night.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the Masonic Lodges. Like I just want to see how other ones compare to that. But yeah,
Sure.
when we were there, Grady, his sister, and I were at a table, and Grady was under Estes.
Yeah.
And it's like I basically felt like I was in a trance the whole time. And then his sister got really sick to her stomach. And then like we just had to cut it short because like Grady said he felt like there was somebody standing behind him the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It was really intense.
Wow. Unfortunately, I don't think we did Estes. Did we do Estes when we were there? I can't remember now. That was before when we did that investigation. That was before I discovered that I like doing Estes. So it was actually shortly after that I did it for the first time, and I'm like, "Ooh, I love this. We're gonna keep doing this. This is fun." I got the Delco goggles that flash the
Okay.
Gansfield experiment, and I tend to like using my Phasma box over the SB7.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys used a Phasma box before.
No.
So it's a Windows-based app. And I know most people, as soon as you say app, they're like, an app. Hold on. So the reason I like it is because one, it's on my Windows tablet and it doesn't force update. I've never updated the app since I downloaded it. There's no extra words or things that get added to it. And because it's on a Windows tablet, I know the microphone's turned off. So it's not receiving anything in. It's not connected to the internet like my phone would be. And it's never been updated. When things come across on the tablet, it doesn't have a word bank, it has a sound bank.
Hmm.
So it makes tones or these really weird sounding echoes and reverb and stuff like that. It doesn't really have words. So when the word comes through, it's not coming from the Phasma box, it's coming from something else.
Hmm.
And because it's on my tablet, I can link it up to like my JBL speaker, my Bluetooth headphones that are noise canceling and stuff like that without having a cord wrapped around my neck. Because that always bugs me when I've got this thing all over the place with my SB7. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
you know, and then with the SB7, you also have the headphone jack that's constantly going out. So if you plug it, unplug it, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, those jacks tend to wear down to where they stop working. And then you have to replace the entire thing. Well, I've got a Bluetooth connection to my Phasma box, and it works every single time with no problem. So I've been using the Phasma box with my Estes and my Delco goggles, and I get some weird stuff. Really weird stuff. Have you guys heard of the Jericho Haunted Trinity in Wisconsin?
Yep, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
our first investigation as a team.
Cool. Okay, so you know how weird that place is.
Yes.
It's a neat place.
It's I guess it's another place kind of like Broadhead where there's a lot of very individual spirits that have very strong personalities.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
We were doing an Estes in the attic of the convent. Um, and I think it was one of the first ones we did that night because we wanted to start in the warm building and then go and torture ourselves and then come back to the warm building.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because we did this in what was it? I think October. So it was not bad, but it was cold in those buildings.
Yeah, we were there in November.
Yeah. And we were able to do sweatshirts in many of the buildings.
So for me, I was able to do a sweatshirt fine, but we had an investigator with us, Nikki Wilson, who is cold when it's 90 degrees out. So she was having a little harder of a time when it was a little chilly in those buildings. Um, so we're in the convent and I'm doing the Estes and Nikki and Neil are asking the questions. And they're talking to a priest. And Nikki knows quite a bit about the building. She's been there a lot. This was Neil's first time. This is my second time. Again, I'm under SS. I don't know what the questions are. I just know that I'm just spitting these answers out. And Nikki doesn't know the name of the priest. So, Neil's like, can I, Father, can I get your name? Can I get your name? Can I get your name? And finally I go, Ken. And they're like, "Oh, hi, Ken. Nice to meet you." Like, blah, 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 blah. They finish the session up, and I'm packing up, and I'm just like, "So, anything really significant jump out?" And they're like, "Yeah, we got the name of a priest." I'm like, "Oh, cool. What do you say?" Ken. Like, yeah, that's his name. His name's Father Kenneth Rogers. That's his name. And they were both like, "Oh, that's his actual name." Yeah, that's his name. That is his name. His name is Ken. So that was really neat. And then when we were in the basement of the school, did you guys get down there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Chad had a
Okay.
good encounter down there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was lots of stuff going on down there.
So right around the middle of the building in the basement, there's like a kitchen setup, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
And just off of it is what we assume is a cold storage room. Back in the day, they probably didn't have refrigerators and freezers. They had a cold storage room that they eventually just added stuff to. But it's basically just a big concrete block. So I'm inside this concrete block with the headphones on, and then Neil and Nikki are in the kitchen. So there's a good 15 plus feet of space between us in separate rooms. And just being in that enclosed space, like I can't hear anything. And then now you add the headphones on top of it. It's like I'm truly isolated in this room. And we're in there for quite a bit. And we make contact with a couple spirits. And one of the first things that Neil talks about is, he got the feeling that this is where kids were punished. This is the
Oh,
punishment room. So, I'm sitting there just doing my thing, and he goes, he has something along the lines of, were any kids beat in this room? And I immediately go, beatings. And then my next three or four responses immediately after that are talking about getting beaten
uh,
and how, kids were brought in one at a time to be beaten. And listening back to that, because I do the editing too, I'm like, holy crap. Wow. Okay. Well, that got dark really fast. And then we made contact with a nun through Estes who um died of a sickness in the throat. It usually kills everybody. And then a couple other things talking about that. And we kind of surmised that it was throat cancer. She wouldn't go into too much more detail about that, but we got the gist. It was throat cancer. And then one of my favorite clips. It's a reel on my Facebook. Neil does this thing where he'll ask for, he'll say a phrase and then he wants you to say the next word, right? So he did in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy, and then the next word would be ghost, right?
Yeah.
mhm.
So in the video, I'm just sitting there in the dark and he does it and I go, ghost. And and Neil's response, he goes, holy, and then just starts swearing like just nonstop. And he was not expecting me just to pop out ghost. And but that's the kind of place where they would say that kind of stuff. They would know what the next word is.
Yeah,
So we got some great, fantastic stuff at Jericho.
yeah.
But I've also been there with a large group of people and didn't get that great of stuff.
Uh,
So I,
now
I
wait,
feel like that's a location where you can't overload it.
yeah, that area where you were talking about, yeah, we were standing outside of it, a few of us with the REM pod, and yeah, they're just having a blast with it, getting it all the way to purple and
Mhm.
everything else. But yeah, kind of like yeah, what you were talking about, I had a feeling that there was some abuse down there, and I asked a few questions regarding it. So
Mhm.
yeah,
If you think about it, most schools had some kind of a punishment room.
yeah,
It was, for newer buildings, it was the in-school suspension room, or it was the room you got paddled. Or
yeah.
for most Catholic schools, that's where you got the ruler across the
You
hand,
were
or
Oh yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
stuff like that. Like they were not nice. So, but where else are you going to do it in that building but down in the basement?
Yeah. Keep it
So,
semi-private.
right. And, knowing the layout of the building, it's mostly just the four classrooms.
Hmm.
There are the smaller offshoot rooms, like on the second floor between the two classrooms. There's a small
Yeah.
room there. I'm not sure what that was, but I imagine a lot of like the administrative stuff was probably in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's where probably the principal's office was and stuff like that. And, where you'd bring a kid down to yell at them in your office and then whack, 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 let them have it. So, but that's interesting that you're getting that same stuff too.
Yeah.
So, very interesting.
And we had
Hmm.
like what, almost a 2 hour Estes session down there in the basement.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
Yeah.
insane.
It went forever.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes when you get into it, like they've got a lot to say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it sucks for me because I know people who are like 10 minutes and you're done. We can't
Yeah.
go past 10. I can do Estes all day. It does not
Yeah.
affect me. I don't get sucked into it,
Yeah.
but I do know that it takes me at least 5 minutes to get into it. So if it takes me 5 minutes to really get into the zone and start answering questions, and then you only give me 5 minutes for responses, we're never going to get anything done.
Yeah.
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 So,
One of the things that they mentioned when we were doing it was that we were actually talking to them, and
mhm.
it's like, well, that's kind of sad because a lot of people must not sit there and talk to them.
Yeah, I don't know. I've done a lot of large group events where they're just like, hey, we could use the help. Can you lead a group here? Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm fine. Um, and people all have different techniques. Like they have different ways of doing things. Some are more like me, where I'm more conversational.
Hmm.
I don't need, can you hit, 37.2 on the, no, I don't care about that. Tell me something really cool about yourself. What was your favorite food? I want to know that. Um, but some people are very big into the science side, and they want you to do super specific tricks in order to convince them that you're really a spirit doing activity.
Hmm.
And, every time I run into someone like that, I always ask them, like, how would you feel if somebody did that to you? Like, you're dead. You can't talk to anybody freely. You have to rely on people coming to you and doing this. And then a group comes in and you're like, oh, I can talk to these people. I can have a good time. And all they want you to do is to perform tricks like a
Yeah.
seal. Like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
how would that make you feel? Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel too good. Like, yeah, maybe try to work some conversation in around the tricks,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and then kind of make them feel good, and then maybe they'll do it for you because you're striking out tonight. They're not giving you what you want because they're like, screw this, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And then they get towards the end of the session, there was it must have been a boy that came in. Because they're like they're still talking. There's still time. You can still talk to them. So that was
yeah,
kind of neat.
yeah. It's always wild when either end of the Estes, the questioner or the answerer, listener,
Hmm.
where you could be like, I think this is a conversation between the spirits and I'm just hearing it because they're talking to each other and they're not talking to us. And I
Hmm.
always found that interesting. Where one spirit is like, no, come over and talk to them. It's okay. And I'm just blurting this all out. And I'm like, what is going on right now? No, no, it's okay. Come in the room. Like, what am
Hmm.
I saying? And then someone comes in, I'm like, this is a different voice. Okay. So the one spirit was trying to tell this other spirit to come in, and it was
Yeah.
okay. It was safe. And then now we're talking, oh, that was really cool. And then the opposite, when you're listening, trying to answer question or ask questions, and you're like, what are these responses even meaning? They're talking to each other.
Yeah.
So I get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I'm kind of interested to hear about some of the Ghosts of the Black Hawk War project.
Sure. Um, we've been researching the Black Hawk War. Oh my goodness. I want to say now for probably 10 years. Um, we spent the first five or so on the Illinois side of the war. Black Hawk War of 1832 was one of, if not the last wars the United States fought in before sending all the Native Americans across the Mississippi.
Hmm.
So this was one of the final nails in the proverbial coffin for the Trail of Tears. This was to where the American government was like, we're done. We're not messing with these people anymore. They all got to go. And then they started, pushing more and more and more westward. So in this case, the Treaty of St. Louis in 1804, as is the norm, unfortunately, the United States government made a deal with the Sauk tribe for two-thirds the state of Illinois, which included the territory around their natural city, their ancestral city. It's called Saukenok, present-day Rock Island. So they kind of get hosed. They don't really get very much. They get mostly trade goods for the entire two-thirds of the state of Illinois, all their territory, and then they all have to leave and go to Iowa. So the entire tribe picks up, goes to Iowa, and Blackhawk, who was not a chief, most people confuse Blackhawk as being a chief. Blackhawk was not a chief. He was a war chief. He the the Sauk tribe had leadership positions designated based on what it was. So you had diplomatic chiefs, you had war chiefs, you had, all these different positions. He was a very fierce warrior. He performed very well in the War of 1812 for the British, became a field promoted brigadier general for the British, did very well for himself. He never really sat, the Treaty of 1804 never sat well with him. He never really thought it was fair. He thought they were ripped off. And in all actuality, they were. Of course, we all know that now. Every treaty we had with the Native Americans, we broke it. So, but they were not allowed to return to Illinois. Like they had to get out and stay out. So in 1832, Black Hawk and his British band, most of his warriors from the war that came with him, and women and children and the elderly. Those three normally get left out of the story. Women, children, elderly. This is not a fighting force. One of two things was happening. Number one, they were trying to go back to Saukenok, Rock Island, to revisit Saukenok, which is where all their ancestors are buried. They wanted to see it one last time before most of them were too old, and then they were going to go back. I don't believe that theory because he didn't do that. The other theory is that the Winnebago Prophet in Prophetstown invited Black Hawk to live in his village. His tribe was allowed to still reside in the state. They didn't have some treaty ripping them off. And technically speaking, Black Hawk would become a tribe member for this tribe. He wouldn't be a Sauk anymore, and it should be allowed. So he never got to that village, though. He crossed over the Mississippi, and the militia was immediately notified. They did everything they could to turn him around. He refused, no, 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 refused, no, 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 until he got to present day Stillman Valley, Illinois. And just north of there, about 5-ish miles, where the Rockford Airport is where he set up his camp. It's actually where the Rock River and the Rock and the Kishwaukee River meet. So he's overlooking these two rivers. It's actually a really good tactical vantage point. He sets up there. The militia responds in kind. Major Isaiah Stillman comes with, a little under 300 men and camps out in Stillman Valley, Illinois today. Blackhawk receives word that, hey, there's this massive company of militiamen here to stop us. We should probably surrender. He sends a group of emissaries down under a white flag of parley to surrender. And unfortunately, as the story goes, the night prior to the militia leaving, there was a massive rainstorm. And, they're going through the prairie side with a bunch of wooden wagons, and one of the wagons broke down. Some say it was a wheel, some say it was an axle, whatever. It broke down. Well, that was the wagon carrying the most heavy cargo the militia had. Their whiskey rations. Barrels and barrels and barrels of whiskey. We're talking heavy stuff now, right? Like, those are heavy. Well, they're not going to leave the wagon with all the whiskey for the Native Americans to take. That's pretty valuable stuff. So they drank most of it, filled their canteens with the whiskey, and then continued to drink it as they marched. Sure, it was more of a stumble, but you know how it goes.
Yeah.
They made their camp at Stillman's campsite and were half crocked. These guys have been sipping whiskey all day long, so they're buzzing and they're flying high. The emissaries come down. These guys are loaded. Nobody really speaks Sauk, and if they did, they're probably buzzed and not very good at it right now. And a misunderstanding occurred, and one of the emissaries is executed in the camp right then and there. Kapow, done.
Oh.
So a secondary force that Black Hawk sent down to observe came back, notified him, hey, we're going to war now. Some things happened. And from that point on, between May to August of 1832, we fought one of the last Native American wars on this side of the Mississippi. Brutal. bloody, bloody wars. They mutilated us a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. But then we ended the war by gunning down about 500 of them with a gunboat on the beach. So, both sides did some pretty bad things.
Oh yeah.
So as we're investigating the war, there's a lot of skirmishes and battles that happen in Illinois before they cross over into Wisconsin. By the time they cross into Wisconsin, they're now in full retreat and they're being chased down by the regular army who had taken over from the militia. So most of the stuff we focused on for that book is in the Illinois side because they're more sit down skirmishes instead of, randomly picking them off as they retreat. A little bit harder to find in Wisconsin. So some of the best stuff we have for the Illinois side comes from two locations. The first one is the Battle of Stillman's Run in Stillman Valley, Illinois. To make an extremely long story shorter, I've already kind of told the long part of it. Black Hawk's forces, after they figure out they've been, you know, dragged into war, they're able to rout Stillman's entire company of 275 men into a full retreat. They trampled over their campsite and made it all the way back to Fort Dixon the next day. Well, a group of 9 men along the way on the retreat held a hilltop. And they're defending the retreat, and then that way everyone can get away, and those 9 men sadly never left the hillside. They are buried there to this day. So we know that 2 of the men were the last standing. And we know this from some personal accounts and also because of what happened to them. So the warriors that were the last standing in the Sauk culture had a lot of power. They were very powerful warriors. They took, quite a few Native Americans down with them. And in order to then take your power, you would scalp them, right? Like, and then take that little piece with you, which, most people think like scalping is like your entire scalp, right? It's like a piece that big. It's just a little tiny piece.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys were more than just scalped. They were scalped. Their arms were deskinned, flayed, defleshed, whatever the word is, dismembered, disemboweled, detongued, and eventually beheaded. So we're doing our investigation at the hillside there, and Dan's using a full spectrum camera, just snap, 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 taking pictures. And in one of the pictures, you zoom in on it, and it's literally a floating head with no body, just a head. And we're looking at it, we're like, the hell is that? And you can see kind of a neat Wyatt Earp style mustache. You can see the brow line very distinctly. You can kind of see like a swept over hairstyle, which more looks like officer compared to regular militiaman who was just a straight farmer. Fresh out of the field, long hair, pulled back in a ponytail, kind of scraggly beard like mine, and they're just off they go. They're protecting the homestead. Officers had a little bit more of a nicer look to them because a lot of the officers were political. But there was one officer that did die on the hillside. His name is Captain John Giles Adams, and he was one of the 2 that was last standing. And he was one of the 2 that was beheaded. And here we have a very neat looking gentleman that's only a head on the battle site where Captain Adams fell. So over the course of, I don't know how many investigations, trying to be like, Captain Adams, this you? Like, we want to know this is you. He finally admitted that was him. Yes. We brought some psychics over, and even the psychics were like, this dude's just a head floating around here. Like, there's no body. Eventually Dan was able to get him to cross over. And then when psychics would see him after that, they'd be like, yeah, no, he's full bodied. You can see his entire body now. So it's almost like we pieced them back together, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
definitely.
But we've got responses from, I think, 7 of the 9 men that were passed away on the field there. Two of them don't want to go. They don't want to cross over yet. We did get seven of them to go over. They helped us find the campsite to where we were able to go to the campsite using an SB7 and ask questions. And Dan, again, I have it on video. I record everything. Dan goes, "What did the Native Americans do to the militia soldiers that were here?" And the SB7 goes, "Scalped." And we're both like, "Oh, holy crap. Okay, maybe we're on the right spot." So, there's a lot of really cool things that tie into the history in these sites.
Yeah.
And then the last one is another site called Kellogg's Grove. It's actually like four battles kind of squished into one memorial. But we went on the anniversary of one of the battles there on the site, and we're just kind of running the SB7, letting it do its own thing. And Dan just kind of intermittently asking questions while I'm setting up. And it used to drive me nuts because I'm like, I'm not ready. Not all the cameras and mics are going. You're asking questions, getting answers. I'm not ready to record them yet. But in this case, I had just happened to get one of the cameras set up and then one of my Tascam DR5 set up. And I'm still working on other stuff. And he goes, how many people are here on the field with us right now? And it goes 9. And he goes, "Oh, 9. Oh, geez." And then I kid you not, the verbal command to fire comes across the SB7.
Huh.
So the battle there took place in cabins, and all the militiamen were in these cabins, and the natives were circling on horseback. And what would happen was they all face out one direction. And then as the horseback came around, someone had to give the command to fire to send the volley out. So we think we caught probably a residual command to fire on the anniversary on the location that it happened. That was always one of my favorite pieces for the Black Hawk War project.
That's cool.
Because SB7, AM radio station scanning in reverse. You got fire with the same tonal inflection. That's not coming from a radio station.
No, definitely not.
Or in this case, I think it was like 4 radio stations, the way that it skips.
Sure.
That was an actual voice. We think it's residual. That's up for debate, but
cool.
It's still so cool.
Yeah.
Like, how much more historically accurate could you get?
Yeah.
So now that we've got the first book done, we are revisiting Illinois sites just to kind of pad those investigations a little bit more. But we're in the process of trying to do Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is proving to be elusive because there's only 3-ish battles that are like sit-down battles. And the last one was the Bad Axe Massacre, where everybody got gunned down. But the rest of the time, they're like in the Wisconsin countryside, just fleeing for their lives, and then just kind of getting picked off left and right. And those locations aren't really documented. Like this person just fell out and died on the edge of the trail, and they just left them because they couldn't stop and do anything. They just had to keep going.
Send a burial party later.
No, they just left them.
No, really.
There was nothing they could do because the United States Army was right behind them. So they would have never been able to even find them again, the way that they were just straight fleeing from them. And then unfortunately they got pushed into the Mississippi, and then the gunboat, like I think 500 Native Americans were gunned down.
Jeez.
And then the ones that made it across the Mississippi were captured by, I want to say, the Sioux. And the Sioux turned in quite a lot. The Sioux was partnered with the government to capture them. But because the Sioux were like a rival tribe of the Sauk, there were a lot that didn't get turned in. There were a lot that didn't leave the beach. So it's the massacre, the Bad Axe Massacre. So we did hit that one up. We got some great stuff there, but we're still going out and repeating the investigations. The problem is it's Midwest weather. So from fall until spring, like, you really can't go there.
Yeah.
It's too cold, it's rainy, it's in the middle of the woods. Like, I don't want to do that. So, but if you get into the summer too much, well, now it's tick season.
Hmm.
So now I got to watch for ticks.
Yeah.
It's a very small, safe window to go in there.
Yeah.
So, but we're getting there, and then we're gonna take the new content and then merge that with the Illinois side and make it one big book for both.
Okay.
Nice.
Now, speaking of the
So
Sioux, have you ever done any researching into the Dakota conflict? Yeah, that's centered in Minnesota.
I have not.
No.
Most of the stuff that I'm focusing on is either for the Black Hawk War or other books that I'm writing that are a little bit smaller in scope for
Sure.
individual locations. But yeah, outside of the Black Hawk War, I haven't really looked too much into other Native American tribes or events.
Okay.
Only other so where was I going?
Good question.
Um, so over the 15 years, what are some professional accomplishments you've gotten?
Oh boy, goodness. Okay. I filmed with Chris Fleming. That dude's wild. I mean, the stuff that happens around him is crazy. We were in a location in Oregon, Illinois called Conover Square. It's like again, a building that's a city block. I go to these big buildings for some reason. And it used to be a piano factory and it's now an antique mall. And he's leading one of his event groups of like 20 people kind of going through the building. And I'm just there to investigate with him and film him doing his thing. And I have the benefit of wearing my headphones to where I've got him mic'd up. I can hear his spirit box super clear. And we were in the basement where people tend to encounter this large, shadowy thing. Something big and dank is down there. And he starts talking about, I think this is a fallen angel. And at the time I didn't know Chris. It was the first time meeting him. I immediately went, okay, buddy. Okay, dude. Whatever. This guy is high on something. So, oh, you know what? I'm here to film. I'm gonna do my job. We're going. He's doing his thing, and he's very religious. So he calls on, I want to say it's Saint Michael, the archangel, to come down and take care of this dark, funky thing. And again, I'm just like, okay, buddy. All right. You do you. This is very entertaining for the crowd. And remember, I'm listening to the spirit box with these really nice headphones where I could hear everything clearly. I kid you not. I hear angelic choir through the headphones. I hear horns. I hear high pitched, very echoey, angelic voices and really deep, low voices going back and forth, yelling at each other in a language that I don't speak.
Uh,
And I guess the look on my face says it all because he looks over at me and he goes, I don't think we're supposed to be hearing this. And I'm just
uh,
like,
gives me the chills thinking about it.
what am I listening to right now? What am I recording? What do I have evidence of? The wildest thing I've ever encountered. And it's the same Spirit Box SB7 type stuff that we all use. I've never heard horns like
Interesting.
trumpets coming out of that thing. And he's talking about, a fallen angel calling down, Saint Michael, and all of a sudden horns and an angelic choir singing. And I'm like, what the is going on right now? I don't know. Who am I? What is happening? So that was mind blowing. And then Chris gave me his phone number, and then we investigated a couple more times. That was kind of wild. Um, I hang out with Dave Schrader a lot. Never thought I'd ever do that. Never thought I'd do that. I have his phone number, and like we were in Gettysburg, he'd shoot me a text and be like, "Dinner? Yeah, where you want to go?" I was like, "I don't know. We'll get an Airbnb or an Uber." And I'm like, "I got a car I can drive." Like, cool, I'll ride with you. What? Okay. So, all that. For one of our episodes for the show, we won a Telly Award, and I have the statue upstairs. It's like a full statue for a
Nice.
film award. Um, Never in my wildest dreams did I think a paranormal show would get me one of those, but here it is sitting upstairs. Um, but at the same time, I've also seen and experienced a lot of things in the paranormal that most people don't get to. Um, I know people that struggle to get evidence in the most haunted locations. I can investigate an outhouse and get someone to talk to me. Nothing really stops me. Like if someone wants to talk, they're gonna talk.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've been bitten, obviously. I've been punched and scratched and all sorts of things. I've had all that happen too. Been pushed. And I've also had my hand held. I've been given a hug. I've been given a massage. I've also been groped in the way that we all want to happen, but the way that we also don't want to happen. So that one was an interesting one. I've seen some dark, dark, dark things. Never demonic. I've never encountered a demon. I've encountered a negative energy manifestation that somebody created themselves, and I watched it throw something at her husband.
Hmm.
But it's not a demon. It's something that she manifested because she bottled up all her emotions. And I've seen things to where that is the embodiment of good. I Those were choir voices. Those were horns. That's got to be an angel. I don't know. I don't care anymore. It is what it is. I experienced it. So, over the last 15 years, I've kind of experienced a lot. And now that I'm kind of nomading and traveling a little more outside of my area, I don't know what the future is going to bring for me now. I do know that for some of the things I'm filming for other people, and I had to remind them of this. When you're doing your investigation in front of the camera, everyone's all bunched together, right? Like there's safety in numbers.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, or remind yourself of this? The cameraman is standing with his back to the room. He's by himself. And when you go, oh, dude, there's something behind you. I can't move. I can't look. I have to stay there and go, oh, come on, don't mess with me. Don't touch me, please. Like we're going to some dark place to do some filming this year, and I'm like, God, I know I'm gonna be standing there, and something's gonna come up behind me, and they do. They come up behind me and they look over my shoulder to look at the screen, and you can feel them, and you're just like, oh, don't touch me, just don't touch me, please.
Uh,
So, but because they're kind of darker locations, I'm like, they're gonna punch me or something. Watch, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
recording, and I'm just gonna be like, ugh. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting year.
Definitely sounds like it.
yeah.
So I have one last question. We always ask this in our podcast: a bucket list location.
I used to say Gettysburg. I went for the first time last year for the Gettysburg Bash and made the mistake of climbing the Little Round Top instead of parking at the parking lot at the top of Little Round Top. So, woo, that was fun. But I did the cavalry field and a bunch of spots, and I got a good experience for Gettysburg. It was really cool. We heard the cannons going off in the distance where there's no cannons going off in the distance. That was cool. So like Gettysburg, okay, scratch that one off. My next location is usually, oh, I want to do a castle. I want to go to Ireland or Scotland. Well, I'm going to Ireland in September. So, that one's pretty much going to be scratched off because
Yep.
we're filming and investigating Lep Castle and the Hellfire Club.
Uh,
I'm like, okay, well, that's not really the bucket list anymore because I know it's going to happen. At this point now, my bucket list is New Orleans. Never been there. Like even the vacation for spring break, none of it. I haven't been to New Orleans. I know there's some fun, freaky stuff down there. Some
Mhm.
dark, dark stuff.
Yeah.
But that doesn't bother me, so I'm ready. I just haven't had the chance yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of my bucket list too. My wife was actually down there
January.
in January. She went on a road trip
Mhm.
with her dad down to Florida, and she was sending me all these pictures from New Orleans. And it's like, okay, you got to stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're
I
making me
I had
jealous.
friends that went down for the Cajun Country Paracon.
Yeah.
I think it's already passed. I can't remember. I think it's already passed. But
I think so.
they're all about it. And I'm like, I couldn't get in. By the time I submitted, they were already full. So I'm
Uh,
like, 2026, you guys come bring me down. Like I've never been to New Orleans. You got to show me a good time. So
yeah.
we'll see if that happens. And then that'll be another one off the bucket list. And then I have to
Mhm.
say Salem.
Oh
Sure.
yes.
So, never been to Salem. Please send me to Salem. We'll see.
You'll get to them.
Eventually. I'm doing much better at my nomading, so I'll get there. I'll get there.
The thing with Louisiana and yeah, all that area down in there, Mississippi, yeah, there's so much black magic stuff that went on.
Oh yeah. And I
Yeah,
totally acknowledge the fact that, this isn't something I'm going to be able to walk into myself. I'm going to need someone local. I get it. I'm cool
yeah,
with it. So I don't want to mess with that stuff. I don't want to bring it home with me. So, someone come with me and make sure I don't do anything stupid
Yeah.
because I will. It's like, ooh, what a pretty rock. Don't touch that. That's coagulated blood. I'm
uh,
touching nothing.
Yeah, Vivianite only grows on human corpses, so that's a fun rock.
See, it
uh,
sounds like a rock I'd love to have, but down there, no, no, nope, nope.
Well, anyways, with that, I'll turn it over to Laurel for our ending, which we let him take care of.
Hmm.
All right, Larry. So now's your opportunity to point the people to any social media sites, any websites you want them to go to, and perhaps remind them of your book and
Sure.
where you'd prefer they buy it from.
So, I do most of my social media through my Facebook. I'm verified on Facebook. You know it's me. I used to have a problem with unverified accounts trying to book events and get paid for me and then
uh,
disappear from the event. And I'm like, no, no. Or they'll book investigations and be like, hey, I'm from Paraflix. I'm the filmmaker. You should let me in for free. And then it's not actually me. So I went and I got the blue check mark. So if you see Larry Eissler 3 at the blue check mark, you know it's me. There you can find my two links. I have a link tree that has other social medias like my Instagram and the TikTok I seldomly use. It's got my projects, the trailers on it, and stuff like that. That's also where you can find the links to the books on Amazon. Um, you could buy them on Amazon for like a couple dollars cheaper and get them 2 days later, or you can buy them from me at a conference and get them signed. So,
uh,
help me lighten my load because I have to carry a box of books with me. So buy them from the conference.
yeah.
Uh,
Broadhead Manor. We'll
I'll,
get some. I'll get some.
they're going to be all over the place with me this year. But by I want to say by the time I'm in Broadhead, I should have my newest book out.
Nice.
And it's called the Ghost Hunter's Guidebook. It is kind of a how-to guide, explanation guide for getting into the paranormal.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to that one coming out. They said sometime in July, so it should be done by the time we go to Broadhead. Um, but otherwise, yeah, you can find me on Facebook, and then from there you can find my production company website or my LinkedIn with all my stuff on it from there.
Yeah, we love a LinkedIn. Um,
Or not
what
LinkedIn,
is
Linktree, Linktree.
or a link tree? Sorry.
Yeah.
When is the next event that you'll be at hawking your books?
So I'm doing Days of the Dead this weekend, but I'm not selling. Um, so the next one I'll be doing books is probably Paraventure on April 5th. I'll be in Bay City, Michigan for that one. There's an online component and a live component. I'm doing the live component. And then the weekend after that, West Virginia, I'll be at Moundsville, West Virginia for the West Virginia State Penn Paranormal and Horror Con. That's a really long name. And then just all all over the place. So if you go to my Facebook, my pinned post has all the posters and images for the events I'm doing. And the very first image is my schedule for the year. And then you can find where I'm going and when and all that stuff.
All right. What? No, I was just gonna say, does anybody else have any other questions, or are we
No.
all right?
Uncomfortable saying this shit.
No, it's nice talking to you.
Yes. Thank
It
you
was,
for
it was great
being
talking with you
on.
guys.
Yes. All right. Well, everybody have a great night,
You
and
too.
we will all talk soon.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Yep. Bye.
You too.
This has been Nightmare Stories of the Other Side, a production of Nightmare Explorers.